Hello everyone. My name is Vlad Demsar. I am the Director of CXI Research Group here at Swinburne University. Today we've got another exciting installment in our CXI Masterclass series. And the title for this session is Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Platform, Rethinking AI in Customer Experience. And joining us to explore this topic is Dr. Eslam Afifi. Eslam is a seasoned leader with over 15 years of experience across CX, data analytics, insights, and AI. Eslam has worked extensively in the financial services sector, both on client side and on the consulting side. And he brings a rich cross-sector perspective to reimagining CX journeys and driving business transformations. He holds an executive MBA from IE Business School and a PhD in customer experience from Monash University. And throughout his career, he's held very senior leadership roles in organizations such as ISG, Hume City Council, Legal Super, and he's currently serving as Senior Manager of CX Data and Insights at MLC Ascender. In addition to these corporate roles, Eslam also serves as a board member for World Journeys, where he supports strategic growth and customer innovation in the travel sector. So welcome, Eslam. It's great to have you with us for this session, and I'm very excited to talk to you about all things AI. Today in this session, we're also going to be trialing a bit of a new format for the CXI Masterclass series, which is designed to be a bit more interactive and discussion focused rather than the sort of traditional presentation and Q&A format. So as part of this session, Eslam will give us a very short and sharp 20-minute presentation, followed by a discussion with myself and then some questions from our audience. So over to you, Eslam, for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Vlad, and thanks everyone for joining, using your lunch break or wherever you're dialing from to be connecting with us. What we're going to be doing today is actually look at things slightly differently, and because everyone speaks about AI, and I love that, I love the hype. I'm a big AI believer, and it's just about as well. But what I would love to speak to you about today is how should we actually approach this. And the reason I always start with that idea is actually really interesting to read about professionals, and a lot of reports coming recently and over the last 2 years is saying that maybe around 45 or 48% of professionals can keep up with AI news. It's not a surprise, to be honest. Like if I go to bed every night and I thought I'm already up to date with everything, and I wake up next day and there is 2 mergers, a new technology, a new company that gives us a new tool that changes the way that we look at it and even interact with AI, which is incredible. But what was really interesting for me, something else. And what was that is actually organizations and business leaders feel exactly the same way. So this is 3 or 4 reports. And one of them that stood out to me was the SP Global report that's saying something really interesting. That this year, compared to last year in 24, 42% of AI initiatives have not even got to see the production. It was really interesting reading that. Now, what I would like you to describe is what these reports are saying and what the emotion that business leaders go through when they speak about these things. Usually, there is a bit of a state of what we call denial. As a business leader, I'm denying on an AI. This is too risky. We're not going to go there. Forget about it. Let's leave it for some time. We're not ready yet, and so on and so forth. And after a while, you get that kind of FOMO kicks in. And you feel like, yeah, I'm missing out. I'm missing out. Everybody else, or as an organization, I'm as a business leader, I need to make the decision. I need to jump in. So I go all full in. And the problem that we have when you go all full in, because you love the technology, you want to have the best technology outside there, you start to get frustrated. You start to get angry because you don't see the results that you were expecting to. And that's what happens is from being 100% all in, you start to get a bit of an anger and even sometimes depression because is that actually right? And after a while, what happens to you is when you take a step back and when you look at the technology the right way, you start, okay, actually, I can see how this can solve some of my problems. And that's exactly what we're going to be speaking about today. So in a nutshell, think of this way. CX and AI projects are exactly the same way. The first thing when you look at a new platform, and there's so many companies out there speaking about, oh, this is the best platform outside there. Think of it this way. You're a company, maybe a transport company, and you're trying to design the best transport customer experience ever exists. I think I'm going to have the best Wi-Fi. I'm going to have a build rocket chip, has all the things that you need, luxury, high tech, everything that you need. And when you're about to launch, no one showed up. And the reason is because if, as a transport company, all people wanted, all the users actually wanted was just a bike. I want to get from A to Z, and in the simplest way for me was just a bike. You spend all that money, all that time, all the effort, and all you had to do was actually starting first with the user's needs. What was the business problem that you're trying to solve? And that's a problem that we're going to speak about today. I have to admit, that kind of idea came to me when I read the amazing book called Follow Love with the Problem, Not the Solution. And Yuri, the writer of the book, you might use his app on every day. That's an app which is called Waze that got purchased by, I think, 1.2 billion by Google. Google Maps bought it, and now they are just using the same interaction. And what was really incredible about that book is they speak about the same thing. Don't start with the platform. Don't start with the technology. Define the problem that you're actually looking for. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. What I would love to do with you today in the next few minutes is go through some of the problems that you and I face on every day as a CX practitioner and see how can AI help us to go through that. So this is kind of the biggest challenges. I'm not saying all of them, but this is the main challenges that we face right now with CX. First thing is, how can I understand my customers better? Because right now, in this rapid environment of technology, is changing behaviors, changing preferences every day. Second thing is, I have a lot of data, especially unstructured data. What can I do with it? Third one is, how do I let my AI tools understand the context? And now everyone with call centers, with CRMs, we have a lot of real-time speech and voice. What can I do with it? And finally, how can I address this idea of AI skills? So let's deep dive into one by one. Now, the first thing is, right now we have no shortage of data. We have a lot of data coming from everywhere as a CX practitioners. Some of it coming from marketing, some of it from your CX or VOC program, voice of the customer, some of it from your digital, compliance, call center. That's a lot of data. And people usually, when I speak to them, I was like, I have this new platform, but I don't know what to do with it. What you need to do is try to focus on a small problem. I'll give you a small example. One of the things, our project that I have done before is we're trying to understand engagement. Right. So out of all of these channels that we have, online, offline, what we built is something really simple. It's called an engagement metrics. First, we had to identify what engagement looks like for us. What does actually engagement means? Is it high? Is it low? And when it should be? And then we got the data team to design with the data team. What are the main key data points? We took it from all the channels we have on top to be able to build a really clear engagement index, which is basically a number that give me high or low engagement, and what does that mean to be as a business. So basically, what AI can do, and machine learning in an amazing way can do for you here, take all of this bulk of structured data. When I mean structured data, is data that's a numbers, and give you one single number, give you direction, which is beautiful. But also we can do this again for other problems, customer lifetime value, or more important, segmentation. We need to understand who our customers are. And I have no problem with building age segmentation as a starting point, but it's just age. We have a lot of variables. We have a lot of views I can see. What is their digital engagement looks like? What is kind of the share of wallet? What is there so many other metrics I can bring in? And the beauty of the machine learning can do that all hand in hand together with you. When you give a simple instruction to the data team, can come up with a really simple number or an indicator that give you who's your customer, how do you look like, what are they doing? Again, really amazing indicators that you can do with machine learning. But you can see now the conversation changes massively when I start by what is the problem. Let's move on. Now, this is one of the biggest challenges that we face right now. It's a question that I've been asked every time I go to a meeting or a round table or a CX or even a data kind of forum or environment. It's always about what I'm going to do with my structured data. I have a lot of structured data coming from my VOC program. People love right now. We have listening posts everywhere. And my VOC program is telling me there's so much data, but I don't know how to do it. How can I deal with it? And I cannot go verbatim, line by line, reading what every customer is saying. And this is the power of large language model. LLM comes in. I just need to explain to you how this changed everything that we do. So to give you a bit of an example, if you work in financial services, it means you're most likely under APRA in Australia. APRA is a government body that tell you right now that most of any sentiment or any negative feedback you receive from your customers, it doesn't matter even if it comes in as a survey response or on social media or on call center, and if it's a negative one, you have to respond to it in a certain time frame because it's considered as a complaint. So you need to act really fast. We were getting all of these things. The problem with that is we didn't have a tool that we could automate all of this process. But what you need to understand what happened is LLM have went through a revolution. I'm not going through technicality, but what you need to understand is this. On your phone, sometimes when you text, the machine learning or the AI in your app, what it did is it actually can predict what's your next word. But that was like maybe 5-6 years ago. What LLM can do right now, they can look at the entire text, an entire context of what you're saying, what you're talking about, and actually enhance it massively, which is incredible. So it doesn't only give me sentiment score, positive, negative, neutral. No, it gives me more insights. So you might be asking me, how does it actually look like? So before, 3-4 years ago, most of the platform or the tools that you can develop in-house will give you this. You have a verbatim as a customer, and you have a sentiment, positive, negative, or even neutral. But if you give it a long sentence that might have a couple of things it cannot do anymore with it, it stops there. But right now, what's the beauty of it? It can give you way more than this. It can give you everything you wanted to have. Intent, it can give you emotion, effort, and now think what you can do here. If your problem is, I want to have a tone of voice, how can I speak to my customers? In what way? The LLM will be able to help you with that. Because based on the massive knowledge that you have got from all of this analytics that you have from text, especially open text, it's going to be able to bring you a tone of voice that you can actually speak easy with your customers. Again, extremely powerful tool. But again, always don't go to the platform. Start first. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Let's move to another one. And this is one of my favorite, right? I'll explain the diagram in a second. But another thing right now, we start to have a lot of voice analytics. And the reason for that, our call center received massively. In any company that you work with, usually you have the highest load comes in, the highest volume of channels that you have engagement with is always to do with voice analytics. Because you have a lot of all these recordings. What am I supposed to do with it? And this is a beautiful of, again, LLM can help you with it. You can create something really simple. So the problem if I have, how can I respond to all these verbatims or all of this? What can I do with the speech and voice recording that I have? You can do two things. You can create an automated flow using things like, depending if you're using AWS or Azure, to automate that process, using GenAI to be able to take the call as an MP3 call or even a video call, or even sometimes images, and do that into a transcript to move that speech to text or image to text. Then it's going to give you what we call it as a transcription. So it's going to give like more of a conversation text. Going to clean it for you automatically. And then after that, what it's going to go is going to give you actually analytics by verbatim. So it's going to give you what are the key insights depending on what you're actually looking for. Extremely powerful, and actually, by the way, became really, really easy right now, and not that expensive as we think it used to be 3 or 4 years ago. So think of this, how it works in a very simple way. I have voice calls, right? The AI takes that, process that, all right? And when it does it, it makes a transcription, and it makes from speech to text. Then the AI goes for me, and it does categorization. And the beauty of this, I can go design that with AI and say, what are the categories? What are the taxonomy? What are actually areas I want to focus on? All right. And then it gives you an idea for everything that you need to have. And then from there, you can get any insights that you want. Is there sentiment? Is there quality? Is there performance? Or any other CX related topics? Or even sometimes ops metrics that you want to measure, you can bring that in as well. And then I will deal that for you. Now, you see that value right now when I started with the problem, not the platform. Because this is a problem that we have right now. We always go with the platform. This platform can do X, Y, and Z. No. Don't start with that conversation. Especially when you work with your C-suite. The conversation has to be, what kind of problem do I have and how do I fix it? Now, the last thing that I want to speak briefly about, you might start saying, okay, hey, but I don't have the skills. I don't have the people. You might have access to the data science team. You have all the data scientists, but I don't have that. But that's why we have a lot of platforms using something called automated machine learning. It's a really simple platform that you put your data in. You already tell it what are the key metrics you're looking for. You actually look at how much budget that you have. So running cost is really controlled. And all you have to do, let it run for you. And it's incredible what you can do right now with a lot of platforms. I'm not going to mention any names in particular, but the main thing that I'm going to tell you as a piece of advice, make sure you're getting the right platform for the right problem. Don't go for a platform that has everything. Sometimes you don't need everything because you're going to be paying a lot of money for things. Sometimes most of the features you don't need. I can guarantee you in this room, most of us work closely with the CX space. you're going to find out that we have a lot of tools, a lot of platforms that we may be using one or two features. That's a budget that can be thrown somewhere else. So what I'm asking you to do is think of the problem. What is the problem that I have in hand? And which platform can actually help to do that? And then it's going to be completely automated, which is a beautiful thing that you don't have to worry about going and hiring a data science team. The one thing I would say about the power of AI right now, this is the most depreciated technology in the history of the world. If we started 5 years ago on that journey, a project would cost me on average 50K. Right now, all I have to spend is maybe 3, 4K max to get a completely automated AI process in place. Incredible. And it's all because right now the computing power became way cheaper and is actually more available in the marketplace. Now, how do we move forward? Please do not take my words as if I'm telling you, oh, we're going to replace, you're going to replace CX teams with AI. No, it's never going to happen. You need to work hand in hand. The idea, what I would like you to do is the AI will streamline some of the process that takes us time. Things like, for example, which is all of us are suffering from, verbatim analysis, open text, speech to text, all of these things that were really painful, it can streamline, but you still need that kind of human expertise. You need your UX and UI, and you still need your CX designers in place. And you need your also data insights people to bring it all together. But basically, we need to change the way we work. But it's always to drive any CX program, you need to think, and the business value always start with the program. Sorry, what's the program trying to address? Basically, what is the business problem I'm trying to solve? And what I would love to do, finally, is I want to speak to you about 4 key takeaways. That if you remember anything from what I've said, if you're going to go on a journey of AI, 4 key elements. You need to understand your data systems. What do I have in place? You'd be surprised. Sometimes people actually don't know what they have. It's incredible. You might be having Azure or AWS, and there's a lot of features already, and all you have to do is go and speak to the right people in your data teams, and they'll be able to guide you. Because again, sometimes, especially in larger organizations, we work in silos. That's 1. 2, get people to get leadership. If there is an AI project and you want to try, go ahead and experiment with it. It's really quite cheap about it, but have the idea of what we call responsible AI. I can speak about this forever, but the idea is you start small, then you go big. And the idea is you need to empower people. Don't be afraid of it. 3 is you need to have design principle in place, training, and the right comms about it. If you establish that from the beginning, alongside with the last point, which is governance, makes your life easier. Because when you get to scalability, I can scale with the right training, with the right policy, with the right governance, and most importantly, with the right communication. I need to communicate to my people what this can bring here, why this is important to you and me to have an AI tool in the workplace. How is that going to help our customers to change either the employer experience or the customer experience? Again, this is just a brief deep dive. I'm a big believer of the ideas. If you want to bring real value, start with the business problem. Don't worry about going to the best platform because there's so many right now. And I'm telling you, moving forward is going to be thousands. Because right now, maybe we have tens, or maybe it start to be having 100 platforms. Going to be thousands of them, which is great. Which means we have the choice between different. There's no monopoly in the market anymore. For us, we need just to decide which tool to be able to help us to get to the right problem, rather than just getting the best tool outside there. That's all from me. Again, it's a pleasure talking to you today, and thank you so much for giving me your lunch break. And I'm happy to connect at any time. Vlad, back to you.
Thank you, Eslam. That was very insightful, and I think a timely reminder to sort of start with addressing business problems and customer needs, as opposed to just going and reaching for the brand new shiny tools that are now available to us that kind of complicate matters. I have a bunch of questions that come to mind based on your presentation there, and I'd love to sort of discuss a lot of those with you. I think, from hearing you speak about that, one of the things that comes to my mind instantly, having been part of meetings where these decisions get made, is around, navigating organizational buy-in. So
yeah, absolutely.
What I'm really talking about here is, convincing people that they need to start with the problem first. Often we sit in meetings where, various stakeholders or senior leadership will get very excited about the latest AI tools, and it's sort of seen as a must-have. How quickly can we get it on board and start deploying it? From your experience, how do you convince people, particularly senior leadership, to focus on the problem first when they're already excited about the tools?
Yeah. No, great question. The idea is speak the same language. So C-suite people, what you're interested in is to do with the bottom line or the top line, right? So if I'm talking to a marketing leader, my CMO, for example, has to be about two things, one of two things, either retention, either growth. If I'm talking about my CEO and the CEO and I'm talking about something to do with efficiency, great. What's ROI? What is the metrics? What's the dollar value we can save? So let's take an example of a call center, right? And automation of a process. It might take an agent X number of hours or minutes to do that task. And we know this is in thousands, so that translates to how much money. So if I implement that tool, it might be costing me to implement 5 grand, but on the long term, I'll be saving annually maybe 100 or 200K. That changes the conversation rather than going, hey, there's a great new tool outside there. Let's go and get that tool. So the key element for me here, it's all about speak the same language, which also usually to do with the bottom line, top line.
So focusing more on the financials in your opinion.
Absolutely, because we are six practitioners, right? We're doing at the end of the day as a business, you need to bring value. What kind of value is it going to bring? And sometimes even you might think, oh, it's not only about the money. Brand repetition is about everything has to do with value at the end of the day. What value do you bring to the business? Or sometimes what value does it bring also to the customers to speak the same language? Of course, it depends who you're speaking to in the business.
Yeah, great. I take that point. I think I've been a part of some of these meetings where that seems to be the kind of point that drives the conversation forward and refocuses things on the problem. Following on from probably that question, I think there's this kind of balance that needs to be struck in organizations, usually between innovation and then practicality. So, what is the latest thing that we need to adopt in order to make us more efficient or kind of improve what we can do, but also thinking about actually solving everyday CX issues.
True.
Do you have any thoughts on that and how we might?
No, that's a great point. In this tools, I would say flip the conversation. So put yourself in your executive shoes, basically. So right now, if you're the executive and you're having a senior leader coming to you and he's speaking to you about, hey, we have this new idea we would like to implement, but there's a cost associated to it. So there is like you're having a problem from a budget constraints, but on the other side, you would like them to go ahead and try. But I'll say start small, then go big. Don't go big full on at the beginning. Start with a prototyping is great. As the six practitioners, we are the leaders on that space. Same thing, when you think of any AI tool, start small, maybe on a small team or a small amount of data or a small, even a function that you might have. And then from there, start to scale. The good thing about that, when you start small, number one is you're working on a budget, so there is a kind of tolerance if things doesn't go right. Number two is there is actually always a retro. You can always look back, oh, I can do this better. So when you start scaling, it's much easier. Number three, you can start to get the buy-in. Because now I have started getting you a small buy-in, giving you a taste of what actually, when it works, how it looks like. So as an executive, you're going to start to feel, okay, if we actually roll this out to the entire organization, the amount of money we can save or the benefits or the value we can see will be tremendous. So that would be my intake on that.
So what you're sort of speaking about there is sort of small, localized,
absolutely
isolated experimentation kind of sessions where you test something, see if it works, and if it does, you're sort of rolling it out more broadly.
And right now, there's nothing better than how cheap it is right now to run these things. It's not that expensive as it used to be before.
Absolutely. What about sort of, I like the idea of kind of starting small, and I like the idea of innovating in sort of isolated environments. What about sort of emerging trends in this kind of CX and AI space that we should keep an eye on, but still kind of keep us in the realm of focusing on the problem?
I think what's really interesting, what's happening in day-to-day without realizing. So you and I, and everyone I think on this call, sooner or later is going to have an agent. You're already having an agent, but you don't know yet what agent you have. So you're already starting with Copilot, for example, and the integration of ChatGPT 5. Because Copilot, let's be honest, before used to be useless. But right now, with the integration of ChatGPT 5, it's became more powerful tool. And what's amazing is that once you give it what file you're looking at, what kind of area of your OneDrive or your whatever drive you're using, it start to look and give you more streamlined process. So I think we're not talking about long, maybe 2 to 3 years. That's my kind of idea. Each one can have an agent that works for you with complete privacy, with the right governance in place, with the right that environment that you're going to have. That's not gonna change. It's gonna be there. The kind of the idea for what I see as the biggest trend, because technology changes really fast, is how can we keep up with it? Not to use the latest trend, but how do we change the way we work? There's a lot of things that we can do, but the biggest trend from me is how do we actually see, starting with the US and Europe and here in Australia as well, is how people right now start to change the way using AI. It's not only for search or writing. No, they're actually trying to start to streamline, treat it more as an agent. So what the biggest trend, I'm a big believer in the short-term future, definitely each one of us can have an agent that looks at your emails, looks at your data sets, looks at everything that you need to have, which means in a short time, we'll be able to do personalization in an amazing way. So as if you're a CX marketer practitioner like myself, you'd be able to have incredible amount of power of computing power, the things that you do and speak to your customers in the right way.
And do you see those agents kind of being embedded throughout some of those processes that you were talking about before? And if so, how would you envision that happening in sort of the VOC, unstructured verbatim feedback? Is there an opportunity to deploy agents in that space?
100%. So think of what we have right now. Right now, it's a very hideous process. You get a call from the call center. It depends on what you have the feature or no in your CRM to transcribe that. Then it moves to you have to get the data feed file. Data feed file moves to your platform. So it's a hideous process, right? But with the power of automation and AI right now, you can get the entire process in no time. And instead of you waiting the analysis to happen, it can happen in real-time analytics. And what's going to happen is not only that the agent can be later on used to creating a pipeline for something like Power BI or Tableau to create for you an instant dashboard. So there is a lot of use cases that we can definitely see there. It is just again, what is the problem you're trying to solve? In every trend you can look at, before jumping on that trend, ask yourself a question: what kind of value does that bring to my team or my organization?
Yeah, I might get that tattooed, I think, just so I can keep it in mind. What about sort of learning from mistakes? I mean, sometimes when we talk about these automations and
Yep.
processes, it all fits really neatly in a diagram and everything looks fantastic. And there's this kind of adage that goes around saying, well, you spend more time fixing automations than you do actually benefiting from their efficiencies.
Yep.
Do you have a time or an example that you can share where maybe, something hasn't gone right, or what you've learned from some of your experiences in this space?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you even something more simple, which is segmentation model. We usually try to do a machine learning model. And the thing is, on paper, it looks amazing. All the numbers are right. We did all the right validation. The data team was like extremely excited because it was a massive data set. But what we forgot to do, we only went only one time to the frontline teams. We didn't speak enough was at the frontline teams. So when we went back, it was like, hey, we have the best new segmentation model. This is the 5 segments that we have. So you're actually missing 2 or 3 segments here and there and there. And it was a bit of a painful experience because we have done the other way around, this is why I'm now a big advocate of that problem. If we have walked through the problem from the beginning, went to them and was like, who do you see? These are early results that we're getting from the AI, from the machine learning tool. Does that align with what you see in your customers? Then the back and forth. And instead, what happened is we went back maybe 12 times because we did the other way around, which is everyone sometimes do it. It's like we get so pumped about the technology. We have this new tool, can do a lot of it. Let's jump on it, but we forget about who is the customer, what the needs of the customer. And no one better knows your customer than your frontline teams. So 100% again, start with the problem, speak to the people who actually interact with that problem every day, and then see how your tool can fit in to solve that problem.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a more iterative kind of solution with a
Absolutely.
couple of different feedback loops from frontline staff who are exposed to people every day and speaking to them on a daily basis and sense
100%.
checking your work. And I
100%.
think that speaks to a broader, I guess, aspect of AI that we all are aware of, which is that the need for critical oversight and for humans to actually
Absolutely.
overview that process and say, does this actually make sense rather than deploying things just on face value?
Absolutely, 100%. It's again iteration process. That's why I don't believe that threat that AI is going to take our jobs is just going to change the way we work. But think of it as a cooperation between a tool and a human being.
It's a good way to frame it. What about sort of problem statements? I think, we see a lot of these, and you're obviously a big fan of starting with the problem, but what does
Yeah,
a good CX problem statement look like? And do you have any from the finance sector that you can share with us?
absolutely. I'm a big fan of using agile methodology, and having a user story is a must. And same in CX space, you always start with the user story. So I give you a very simple user story that if you don't get it right at the beginning, it's going to be a problem. So an claim experience or withdrawing money in financial services is everyone speaks about it to be a seamless experience. I need to have the money straight away out, least clicks, least taps, least amount of steps to get the money. When you actually do the user research, it's actually wrong. Do you know what users always ask for? No, I want to have a fraction. Always ask me, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to claim the money? Is that the right amount? People don't mind having this right when it gets to the financial transaction to make sure that I've done the right thing, because maybe I've entered the wrong amount. Or I'm doing a transfer, I'm transferring the wrong amount. So having that friction, that step back is crucial. And the way to have it is starting with a really simple statement, which is putting yourself in the shoes of the customer. As a bank customer, I would like to withdraw that money and then continue with that story and be clear around that story. So your statement starts with defining who's actually the person who's impacting by that problem and starting from there. Or rather than providing the seamless experience, yes, a great experience for you, but for your customers, not what you want. Again, you're going to always see it comes back to starting with who's impacted by that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. What about sort of ROI? We sort of touched on this before when you were talking about sort of building a business case for some of these tools and platforms based on the problem. How do you go about actually proving ROI for some of these solutions? And what sort of metrics are you using, and how quickly can you measure uplift, do you think?
I'll give you the easiest way from a CX practitioner. One of the most powerful things you can do in a CX space is if you overlay your CX data with your operational data. So right now, for example, we're getting a lot of people, if you're in a company and you're getting a lot of call volume to your call center, right? And you see they are actually really kind of happy with the agent, but they are not happy with the process. Straight away, look at your operational data, and the operational data is going to tell you in the call center how many people, what was the topic people calling us about. So right now if I embedded right now in new machine learning to look at all the verbatims, and I can see for the verbatims, the people are very frustrated with things like a single sign-on. There's no single sign-on, and every time I have to log into my phone, and it's too many steps to get in, and so on and so forth. Don't wait anymore. That's by itself is a goal. All you have to do is calculate how many hours have people actually spent calling, and how many of my agent responding to these calls. Multiply that by the cost of hiring them for the entire time, and just go to your executive and speak to them in the same language. Hey, right now this is costing us X amount of thousands of dollars every year, and then we have to hire extra amount of people to get to the call volume. All we have to do is spend maybe less quarter of that money to fix that problem. So something like that is really simple. Second thing that you can do, look at easy metrics. The call volumes, they might reduce after you implement the new initiative. That's a win. Look at quick wins. Another quick win is share of wallet. There's another ways that you can do that. Sometimes what happens to us when we use AI and machine learning tools, we think it's as a magic bullet that's going to fix all things. But sometimes business need to see early or ROI straight away. You might not there in your business case, you have written that's going to be achieving a lot of things, but that's why when you write your business case, speak about short-term, mid-term, and long-term. And what ROI can you achieve in each one of these? Because every business doesn't want to wait, let's be honest, an entire full time of 3 years to get any results. They usually want to wait 1 quarter, 2 quarters, and then they're like, what are the results of the initiative straight away?
Yeah, usually it's 90 days. Where's my
That's true.
results? Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. What about this idea of, I mean, there's obviously a lot of platforms and integrations and everything out there. And at some point, you're going to have to make a decision around whether you build it yourself, whether you buy it and kind of deploy it in-house, or whether you partner with an external vendor. How do you go about making those decisions in what you've done so far?
The simple answer, it depends on what capability do I have in-house, or what's big is my budget, and most importantly, what we discussed earlier, what's ROI on this? I'll give you a very small example. So one of the platforms that we use in previous companies had a really good AI tool that does a lot of verbatim analysis for us on the spot. However, the problem is the cost of building, connecting my internal systems with that platform was extremely high. So we did a very basic analysis, how much it's going to cost us to keep that, to establish the API, to connect the systems together, and even to keep it running. And it was a staggering number. And straight away, what we could fix instead, no, don't have to worry about that. We have to do something called FTP, which means it's a data dump file. You do once a day, manual process, and it can be easily done. It can be much cheaper. So again, sometimes the best ways are not always the most advanced ways. They're actually the simplest solutions to your biggest problem. And that's what the way that I will go about. If you're designing an in-house versus out-house, depends. What system do I have in-house? Do I have the right people? Large organizations, you might actually do. You just have to look for the right people, collect cross-functional team, and that will be your team. Or even in your case, if it's a small team, then you actually, before investing so much money, start on a smaller scale and decide. Try to experiment first to be outsourced, and then when you are capable enough and you see more results of it and there's buy-in, that's when it's time for you to go in and to get it from external.
And I like the idea of, does the data need to be live through a constantly connected API, or can it just be a call that happens every 24 hours, 48 hours? What do we actually need?
100%.
And what about, I guess, you touched before on responsible AI and ethical, deployment of some of these solutions. So what are some governance guardrails, I suppose, that you'd implement or build in to ensure that there's trust amongst both customers and execs as well?
So number one is, and this is maybe you can use two use cases. If you're doing external, it's really important to let your compliance to work hand in hand with your compliance team. I know sometimes you look at compliance team as like, I don't want to say this is a bad way of the enemy. No, it's actually they are there to support you, trying to understand what is their environment, where does it live, how does it go, what are the best governance metrics we can use. Second thing is sometimes ask straight up questions. If your service provider is using an existing algorithm, ask them about this algorithm. How it was trained? Where is my data live? Ask about simple questions that you might think, oh, they are very simple. They might sound silly or stupid. No, you're not. You're actually asking the right things. Where is going to data happen? How are going to those kind of answers or generated answers I'm going to get? How train? What data sets have they used? That's the first one from the supplier side. If you're building something in-house, you need to be very clear what data are you going to put in. That's number two is that actually the right data? Because remember, rubbish in, garbage in, garbage out. Simple as that. Are we having the right data in? And sometimes you're not the right person to decide that. You know who's going to be? The experience owner. If it's an ops team, the head of the ops team will know better. If it's a marketing team, that marketing team will know better. And then work together hand in hand. And the last thing there, I would say communication. It's the key. Manage expectations, same as we do with our customers. If you're also working with your customers, tell your customers the story the way it is. Tell them we're trying to enhance 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and this is why we're going to be using that tool, and be clear about what's going to be used in there. And always give them an option to opt out if they want to opt out. Once we have that level of transparency, you'll be amazed how people love the idea of just, if you're transparent and if you make my experience seamless, easier, I'm definitely in for it.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with things like call centers and customer complaints and those types of conversations, people would, generally prefer to have their queries answered and responded to in a much faster manner.
Absolutely,
so anything
100%.
that allows us to get there will probably help.
True, 100%.
Okay, I'm starting to sort of run out of my own questions, so I might throw it to our audience at this point and see if anyone has questions. So in terms of asking your questions, we've got the chat box enabled now, so you should be able to either type that in there, or you can private message me just by using the little drop down, and then I can relay those questions to Eslam to answer for us. So just give people a couple of minutes to sort of have a think and see if any come through. All right, I've got one private message here already. Just one sec, sorry. Okay, so I won't name names because it's a private message, but this audience member is saying, well, we've got thousands of NPS verbatims and sort of call center notes, but we don't actually have an internal data science team. So what's a kind of experiment, sort of isolated case that we could use to turn that into actions for next quarter?
That's a really great one. What I would say is take a sample, look at your touch point from the NPS, or if you're collecting it from one touch point or multiple. Get something that's going to be, I know it's going to be contradictory to everything that we say, but it's really powerful. If you read and you make your team, if you have even a small team of 2, read some maybe 200 or 300, and you're going to see the verbatim that's coming through. And after that, what you can do, look at you have two hours way. If you have a very tight budget, there's a lot of softwares that you can actually purchase for $1,000 or $1,000. And then you actually code those themes that you found out from those 200 in there, and that will be able, the ML in those softwares will be able to do it. But if you don't have the skills to do it, there's plenty of platforms that you can do it for you. But the most important thing is you test your data yourself first. See what are the themes that you have there, and then have an experiment. And don't sign up for the entire ESR, maybe for a month or a quarter first. See that if once you put that data into the platform, are you going to get the same themes, the same kind of value that you expect? And once you have, you can go with it. There's multiple ways that you can see, but all I can say about this verbatims, they are gold. Because NBS is great, but NBS is just a number. It doesn't give you the context of what actually people are saying. What are the drivers behind that NBS?
So it's about sort of looking through everything yourself first, then deploying
100%.
an automated solution, sense checking that against your own interpretations. And if it works, then you can scale it further.
Absolutely. And remember what we talked about earlier in my presentation. You have to have the two elements. You have to have the technology, the human interaction as you as a judgment of the data to work hand in hand.
Is there other sort of, apart from NPS, is there anything else you'd use? I've just had a private message here from someone saying NPS is BS.
Yeah, I like that. True. I actually, to be honest, I don't want to say this was a strong language, but I think I'm agree on that. And the idea is you need to look at primary metrics differently. So if you look at me as a customer, right, you need to look to me three levels, three lenses. First thing is you need to measure how much effort did you put me through to complete my task that I want to complete, either online or offline. So that's an effort score. Second thing is you need to see how satisfied was I through that process. So that becomes my CSAT. Then you can ask me about the likelihood of the recommend. Those three things with that triangulated approach gives you a lot of power to be able to understand, rather than asking me how many times would I recommend any platform. That's for me to have a conversation with someone, with my friend, my family member, to tell them, hey, I recommend using Teams. That's not going to happen. But if you go that approach, then that's way more insights and knowledge that you can gain by having look at different metrics together rather than solely focusing on NPS, which is something I strongly agree to avoid using a single metric. You have to look at multiple metrics, give you more of a powerful, insightful story.
So is it about taking all those metrics and programs and taking the data from all of them and amalgamating them and using the same AI solution to process them?
100%, because for example, the AI solution can give you the drivers. And it's fascinating. Once you see what are the drivers for the efforts, then the driver for satisfaction, then the drivers for the NPS, you have an amazing, compelling story that will tell you across the entire journey, what are the real pain points that if I fix, I can actually address all the three. Not only that, what's a beautiful thing about the AI, it can give you what kind of the expected measure. So if you do one single uplift and you spend that X amount of money to bring that uplift there, what is the expected return on investment from an uplift, either in your CSAT, in your NPS, or your effort? Well, sometimes I'm sure some people on this call, some of them have to report to the board. So it's a score metric that you have on your board paper that you have to report to and justify. And there's nothing better than looking at the top-bottom approach. What's your prime metric, NPS, CSAT, or effort? What are the trends are? What are we going to be doing to address that, to move that trend even further into a positive number rather than a negative number?
Yeah, absolutely. I've just had another private message here, which is interested to understand what order is recommended in terms of asking CES, CSAT, and NPS. And this happens
Great
and
question.
comes up quite often in conversations. So
I love that. And again, it depends on the experience. If the experience is fully inquiring to me to completing a task, then 100% is to do with effort. Effort needs to be number one, because I want to know first, was that experience, especially if it's an online experience, was that easy for you to complete? Complete a form, complete a claim, withdrawal, or even setup or onboarding, whatever the experience looks like. Think of that experience. I always say the order is not set in stone. The order is all to do with one thing and one thing mainly, which is what is all to do with put yourself in the shoes of the customer. What is the question that you're most likely to answer first? And that actually ties strongly with the response rate. A lot of the time when we look at surveys, especially when we see why we have response rate, because the order of the questions and the nature of the questions themselves are nothing to do with the experience. So as a person who just finished a very hideous process, the first thing I want to do, I just want to actually tell you my frustration. So I love your products, but I would be much easier to do 1, 2, and 3 because the effort was really tough. And then get into CSAT and then to the MPS.
You're going to want to guide them through that process. And there's no point, I suppose, sometimes asking NPS first because they're likely to just tell you their frustrations within the MPS
It's true.
context rather than
And
the
then
actual.
and then it's going to be, I'm going to go and tell you in my comment, as I mentioned before, read my earlier comments. That's exactly what they're going to say.
Yeah, and then that in turn then skews your CES data
Absolutely.
and CSAT data and so on. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
cool. Okay. What about some of the practical sort of functionalities of all this? We've just got another question here, which is so for voice analytics in particular, you know, what does minimum call volume and signal quality need to be to get reliable insights? So does this matter within this process?
No, it actually doesn't right now. Computing can does anything that you want from maybe 100 calls to a million calls. Of course, the only thing you have to consider is depending if you're doing this externally, you might have a contract obligation that this is the max that you can get from a conversational data and the size of it. But from a small one, it's actually better when you have a small ones. Because if you're starting in your journey and you have maybe 1 or 2 listening posts on voice data and you're getting that, it's actually way better because now you have a great frame or idea for what your verbatims or themes are going to be look like. And then the more program is going to enhance, you can look at it again and again and again. Because one of the rules that I always advise practitioners to do, AI doesn't sit in stone. Don't think the machine is going to learn itself. You have to retrain your model every year at least with new parameters, with a new thinking, with a new ideas. So sometimes starting small, even with 100 responses, is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. And then the more that you have more products, more services, or even sometimes you measure, that's when you actually retrain your model to get the new context in.
Sure, and I think maybe that was great because it talks to the question of sort of minimum sample sizes and things like that. But what about sort of with the actual phone call itself and the sound quality and the reliability of some of these solutions? Because sometimes people are calling contact centers, there's bad lines, there's noise distortion, there's low volume calls. Are these solutions able to sort of pick up on that and kind of work through it?
That's a great question because it ties again to the same thing we talked about earlier. You're trying to solve so many problems at the same time. That's by itself, it's a problem. What you need to, as a CX practitioner, is look at the journey and look at the from an employer experience. And if once you map that journey and you looked at there was a problem in your sound system and the call center, maybe actually before we invest into AI, let's go and fix that problem first. So it doesn't make sense for us to go and invest money and buy the best technology out there to give us audio from audio to text, but actually our audio is completely distorted and cannot be used. So again, this is what I'm always don't think of AI as a magic bullet. AI can fix certain specific. It has still technology, which means it still has limitation. And you need to understand what's the problem, scope it as much as you can, and then build on top of it.
Yeah, and I suppose that talks back to that, other point you made earlier, which was around, isolated test cases and experimenting first and
True.
identifying potential problems. That's great. Got another question here, which is around what are your thoughts on synthetic data use? Is it a case of sort of bad data in and out, or is it worth using synthetic data?
Yes and no. I have to say I'm in the middle of this. The problem with synthetic data is usually it relies on a panel, and usually you don't know the source of that panel. So I have some process and some ideas in place that I use, and sometimes I recommend with the team using AI for them. And the idea around your screening questions are quite important. So when you start using them, get a sense check of that data that you're gonna get. And you as a practitioner, you'll be able to tell, this is actually a good representation of who my customers are. Because everyone right now, especially if it's incentivized, there's a lot of people who are sitting there doing nothing except taking surveys, but you have nothing to do with your product or your company or your services. So that's number one that I would say. Number two is make it only one layer. So you cannot use that data and make your entire judgment or decision or business decision on that data. You have to use at least a triangulation, which is at least 3 sources. What my internal customers are saying, what my frontline are saying, and then where do I benchmark using that data and compare it to the outside market or my competitors. Again, it's not a perfect solution, so I wouldn't say yes or no, but I would say treat it with cautious and make sure that you have the right process to you actually validate that you're getting the real responses of people who actually represent or a potential representation of your potential customers.
Yeah, and I think the jury's still out in terms of this. Everybody's trying to figure out the best way to use it, but I don't think I've seen a best case scenario just yet.
I think it's evolving, but we might see something soon. But even if it evolves, you need to have this process. This is again back to the governance model that we spoke about earlier. You need to have this process of validation in place, making sure whatever you build, internally or externally, whatever you use, there's a validation metric or process that you validate what I'm getting is actually a real true representation of customer feedback.
Cool. Okay. I've got two more questions here, and I think I'll ask them in the last sort of few minutes, and we'll close off questions after that. So the first one's a really interesting one, I think, and it's about sort of mitigating hallucinations and kind of bias in large language models. So you know, what do you do if you kind of have these issues in the way that it's categorizing sentiment and complaints and so on, and whose responsibility is this?
Unfortunately, it's your responsibility if you are the CX program leader. That's number one. But the reason for that is two reasons. Number one is the data science team wouldn't know. They just see a number. So they see a number and number out. They see a text and text out. They're like, everything's working fine. For me, this is working. It's your job to know this is out of context. I'm not going to go through much into technicality, but simply there is some rules that you can do validation. Something called alignment. Is actually the model measuring and actually calculating what it used to do. Two is there is validation rules that you can build with your data science team. Anything to do out of these categories, I don't want it to be included. You can do that even with Gen AI. It's incredible what you can do right now. Everything can become customizable. And that's why I'm a big believer that the CX space or the CX practitioners need to sit closely with the data science team. Please, if you're an organization, when the two teams don't speak, have that round conversation. It's a must. Both of them need to understand. Your data science people need to understand your context and vice versa. You might think, yeah, but I don't understand anything. They speak a different language. Speak a simple language as a customer. And the data science people will be able to come to you and speak to you. But what we're seeing right now is the data science go and deploy something in their own world, which is on paper and metrics by numbers. It's all correct, but you cannot use case. I can tell you hundreds of use cases when I go to companies, they purchase a very expensive large language model or a platform that enables language model, and they're sitting on the shelf or online. No one is using it because there is no use case.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm hearing is that you're sense checking that data and making sure
100%.
there's no, you know, hallucinations are reduced by, you know, talking to different teams, getting the context, understanding the front line and so on, and always asking yourself the question, oh, you know, does this actually make sense, and does it sort of reconcile and corroborate with what we're hearing from internal teams?
Another one is take it to the frontline team. If it's something to do with feedback, and take it to the frontline team, the call center team, that if you have another kind of sales team even, and ask them that question, does that resonate with you, what you're hearing? And this is sometimes it's the best thing to do to see the resolution is that right or wrong if you're not aware of the context. Frontline teams are a treasure that sometimes are just hidden gems in terms of feedback because they interact with our customers every day. But sometimes we think we know better, but we don't know better. Remember, CX all about empathy, not only with the customers, but also with our employees.
That's a great point. Last question here, which is about sort of that idea that you mentioned earlier of using those kind of isolated experiments and kind of testing for a little while and then kind of thinking about, do I actually deploy this on a broader scale? Given that so many of these things kind of stall in their infancy, and I think you said 42% are abandoned, you know, at various points, like what's the actual, you know, kill criteria for some of these projects? How do you go about deciding whether something is deployable on a broader scale or whether we've just, you know, maybe we've failed, but we fail fast?
Yeah. Number one is for me is to do with starting with the business case. Before you go, even if you're going to do it on a very small scale, you must have a business case in place. Because the business case, what it forces you to do, and then sometimes I know sometimes we hate, oh, there's a lot of work that have to be done. But the beauty of it is define for you those earlier. You don't have to define yourself. You know, if I don't have that metric, if I don't have that ROI on that sample size, on that small project, on that small scale, there is no point to scale. Not only that, you have each one of us has budget constraints. No one of us has any limited budget. We would love to, don't get me wrong, but we don't have it. So we know if I spend X amount of dollars, I'll be able to get that kind of insights. Is that worth it? Ask that question. Is that going to be addressing a problem from a retention, from growth, from more revenue or cost saving that's going to be help us or no. This is why starting with a business case is a must. That's number one. Number two is the buy-in. The buy-in is a must in that case. If you deploy it and you think this is the best thing ever, remember we have this bias. I built it, so this becomes your baby. So you're like, this is the best thing ever. But if you put it to test and the frontliners are using it, but you don't see the use case, maybe you need to understand there's something wrong in your process. Not in the process, or maybe that's not the best tool outside there. Because I can tell you there's so many times, I'm sure all of us have been there, we think this is the best technology ever, but when we actually put it to test with the people who are actually dealing with a problem, with the issue we're trying to address every day, they're like, this doesn't work for me. Again, empathy and business case are key in here.
Yeah, and look, sometimes it's difficult to step back because once you invest the time and the
Sure.
hours and the kind of interest in kind of developing this, and then you have to let it go. It's not that easy, right? But
100%.
I think, at some point you've just got to realize and talk to the right people and understand that maybe it's just not working in this particular situation.
100%.
Great. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap up the questions there and we'll wrap up the session. I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Eslam, for joining us and sharing some of your perspectives and expertise on how we could, start with the problem and then select the right solution and therefore improve, customer experience in various aspects of our internal business operations, which is fantastic. It's been a really insightful and thought-provoking discussion. I also want to thank the audience for coming along to the CXI Masterclass and those who asked questions and contributed to the conversation. I hope everyone's enjoyed the new format. If it's a success, we might look to keep things going in this way going forward. And we look forward to seeing you all at the next CXI Masterclass. Bye for now.
Thank you, Vlad. Thanks, team. See you guys.
Thank you, Eslam.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.